It is time for another best of 3 series, and what I got for you today is a Zerg versus Zerg. Spawning in game number 1 here on Proxima Station LE, in the bottom left corner of the map with the blue drones, we have Leenock. And his opponent spawning in a cross position and playing in red, he goes by the nickname of Impact. And of course, both of these guys are high-level Korean professionals. Now, Proxima Station LE, it's a bit of an interesting map, in particular in game number 1, because this one, over the course of the last couple of months, has been going through a wide variety of strategies. The reason for that is just simply this expansion right here. It kind of makes for awkward games. So let me try and explain to you why that is. So of course in Zerg vs Zerg, right, one of the most common build orders is indeed the 13-12. People open up with a 13 gas geyser and go into a quick spawning pool as well. And they basically try and end the game at the 1 minute mark. However, if your opponent is taking the safe expansion as their first hatchery, in many of the instances, and by the way, we do see both of those players taking the forward expansions right now instead, but if, say for example, Impact would be opening up with a very aggressive cheese, a 13-12, and Leenock would take the in-base expansion instead, there is a very large chance that Leenock will not only be able to out-micro his opponent and just simply be safe and not really lose any workers, but secondly, he will more than likely also be able to keep the expansion alive if he were to take it here. Because of the chances, though, that their opponent are indeed, you know, cheesing, which is very, very small on a map like this, a lot of players have opted to take the expansion right here on the low ground instead. That's the first wide variety right there. Just because their opponent has a chance of potentially cheesing their opponent, a lot of people have been opting to go for the greedier base just because this one is easier to wall in and defend in the mid-game scenario. Now, it doesn't just stop right there, and I think we actually got a bit of a weird game like this right here in game number 1 on our hands as well. Because a lot of people are indeed opening up with a hatchery first on this map, even though there's always the chance that their opponent is going for a 13-12. A lot of people have opted to skip out the gas geyser lately, and this is like a recent development. A lot of people have opted to skip out the gas geyser lately, and we see that in, you know, the bases right here of both of these players and go for a super quick third base instead. Knowing that their opponent is probably not gonna cheese, probably gonna go for a hatchery, you know, very early on. They're gonna be able to go for a very quick third hatchery very quickly as well to try and get that economic advantage. And really, we are in a bit of an awkward state right now. I was hoping that was gonna be something like this, in particular like best of 3 series, right? When you are, you know, gonna test the waters a little bit and you are gonna play a macro focused game, which is usually the case in game number 1. It now all becomes on who gets the gas geysers latest. This is such a weird setup right now. So both of these players, right? Let me point it out once again. Both of these players have gone for a hatch, pool, hatch, right? Which is pretty uncommon in Zerg vs Zerg, just because of the chances that your opponent is going for a 13-12. But because this map features an in-base expansion, people have been making the assumption that it's not really gonna be the case. And so far, I mean, this has been a near identical mirror matchup at this point in the game. Now, it does look like Leenock is gonna lose one of his overlords right here, because one of the queens is going on a bit of a safari right here, trying to kill this overlord, which is actually working out quite well, because he knows as well that his opponent is gonna be mostly gasless here. But it becomes such a weird game very, very quickly. Now, would I recommend for you to go ahead and do this threat right here on the ladder? Probably not. I mean, there's still a chance that your opponent is not going to give you the respect like these players are doing, and, you know, that he will just simply make a 13 gas geyser in a 12 spawning pool and come rush you. But hypothetically speaking, all of those builds should be countered, and this is what we call the meta in StarCraft 2. While on paper, this is an extremely, extremely greedy build here from both of these players. Because of all these hypotheticals that I just named off, people giving each other the respect that they deserve as well, it becomes a very weird game where both players are just making as many drones as they possibly can. Now, we do see lair timings right here for both of these players. Eventually, there's a bunch of gas geysers going down as well. Impact is gonna scout ahead right here. You will see that there are 2 evolution chambers at the front. And I think that indeed, we're just gonna see both of these players drawn up like absolutely no tomorrow. Lairs going down, double evo chambers going down here at the front. And at this point, I mean, if you were to even try to run in some Zerglings, it's already gonna be too late, because that wall off at the front will be completed here for both players very, very shortly. And there we go. This little gap right here is basically like pluggable, I suppose, right? With just a single queen. She's going to be able to hold the door. And at this point, we are in a heavy, heavy macro game. And I love it. This is why I love StarCraft 2 so much. Even though these maps have been around for seasons, right? And even though people have been changing the way that they play on these maps for quite a while, this is one of these, like, This is one of these weird developments that we've been seeing quite a bit in ZVZ lately. Just because it becomes such an awkward game and both of the players are giving each other so much respect that, I mean, they're basically just droning up. They're basically just droning up. Now, here's the interesting part, right? Because both of these players are near identical at this point. It looks like Leenock is setting up for a really powerful timing attack right here. It looks like he may actually be looking to take a fourth base here shortly as well. He's going for that +1/+1 as well as the Glio Reconstitution, where we see the 1/1 being taken here for Impact, but no roach speed just yet. Instead, he has taken the base at the gold here. Another one of these weird varieties, right? So both of these players are trying to cut as many corners as they possibly can. They know that both of them are going to be able to, you know, make a ton of roaches here. They're going to be capable of getting a very, very nice amount of roaches out shortly. They also can set up for a very powerful timing attack with 1/1 and Glio Reconstitution. However, Impact has decided to skip out the Glio so far. Now, I highly doubt that that is going to be a mistake. I think instead, he is opting to make more Ravagers than his opponent, knowing very well that Leenock is probably going for that push that I was just talking about, even though he knows that the fort base is going up here on the left-hand side of the map as well. As long as he makes a whole bunch of Ravagers, yeah, there indeed we do see him go down. As long as he makes a whole bunch of Ravagers, he's going to be able to just simply defend his gold base with relative ease, and he's going to be in an extremely powerful position. Whew! To potentially take this base and macro from it and start mining from it here as well. So I think we're going to see a bit of a drone transfer here in just a second too. And look at the amount of economy. This is some of the most passive Zerg vs Zerg that I have ever seen. But it's only possible because these maps have been around for such a long time. And indeed, workers are being transferred. Drones are moving towards that gold base. And indeed, Impact, he's starting up the Glio Reconstitution right now. 1/1 is done. There's a chance that Leenock can go for a push right at this point in time. But this is going to be very awkward here because look at the amount of stuff. Now, of course, this does kind of leave the natural a little more vulnerable. And of course, Leenock with that roach speed is going to be able to move around quite a bit more rapidly than his opponent. But a blue patch mineral base here is not quite going to cut it against all of the income that Impact will be able to generate right now. And once this roach speed finishes up as well as 2/2, he is setting up for an extremely powerful timing. Impact, though, doesn't quite want to move off creep, knowing very well that he's going to need that speed of his roaches on creep in order to try and, you know, defend against this. But look at this menacing force here from Impact already. Army supply-wise, though, both of these players are near identical. A couple of roaches are, however, making their way towards that natural, and that hurts. This is exactly what I was talking about. Slow roaches are going to have to try and catch up to the speed roaches right now instead. We do see a Hydra Den going down at the same time. A push right here at the front base is going to be a very tricky one to hold. And actually, all of a sudden, Leenock with that roach speed is literally every single place that his opponent can't be. I mean, look at this. The roaches without the speed are just not going to be able to catch up to the roaches with the speed, and so many drones end up falling here in just a matter of seconds. At the same time, Leenock is going to make a push right here at the fort base as well. Roach speed turns out to be an important upgrade here instead, and while Impact was setting up for an extremely nice timing attack here, just simply delaying that roach speed for so very long forced him to split up his army, and at this point, I think that Leenock may just simply have a little bit too much. This is such an awkward game. You should not try and do this kind of build on the ladder, but I love seeing it in professional StarCraft 2. I mean, both of these players just simply playing their hearts out, trying their very best. And actually, Leenock, he may have accidentally overextended right here. Of course, now that roach speed is done for Impact, he's going to be able to chase down his opponent's roaches as well. But at the same time, Leenock did kill one of the bases of his opponent. That natural will not, or the third base rather, will not end up living here for a little while longer. We now also do see tunneling claws for Leenock, and that means indeed that Impact realizes it. He's just simply lost too much economy, and game number 1 goes in favor here of the blue Zerg. Now, I'm not gonna lie, those are some of my favorite games to cast, just because I've tried predicting the strategies that both of them go for, and then they end up going for them as well. It's just become a lot more common lately on the ladder, you know, to try and go as greedy as we can. And of course, generally speaking, the Korean matches take it up a notch, where they just squeeze out so many workers, and you're just wondering, hey, is this really not, you know, at least a little bit too greedy? Isn't there a chance that both of them will just simply die if a bunch of Zerglings show up? And yes, in most cases that will be happening. The funny part is that after a while, right, when both of the players are playing a little bit too greedy, generally speaking, the matchup will shift back on a map, right? It will shift back to something that is far more aggressive as well. So it becomes a little bit wonky, where one player is trying to open up with triple hatch, and then all of a sudden another player goes 13-12, and it's like, well, why was that triple hatch opener ever viable in the first place? Because that wasn't even close. I love StarCraft 2, even though the game has been out for 7 years at this point, right? And the Zerg vs Zerg matchup has gone through a bunch of balance changes, but really most of it is still very similar to what it was like in Wings of Liberty like 7 years ago. The strategies have been evolving like absolute crazy. I mean, for the longest time, in particular during Wings of Liberty, it was just cheese versus cheese. That's all the matchup was like. And then people figured out, hey, if I go for a quick expansion and I go for the gas guys at first rather than the spawning pool, I'm gonna be able to finish up Zerging speed and still stop the early game pressure quite nicely as long as my micro is on point. And at that point, I mean, the strategies just start evolving like absolute crazy. And I mean, what's better than one hatch? Well, two hatch, right? Anyway, another thing that's interesting in Zerg vs Zerg, I guess, now that we're talking heavy strategy anyway, is Overlord paths. There's this weird Zerg vs Zerg Overlord meta going on in StarCraft 2, once again when maps are around for a long time. Basically, players are trying to not show each other Overlords, because if you show the second Overlord to your opponent, he can confirm whether or not it's an early game cheese or whether or not it's a standard 13 Overlord timing. And because of that, people have been sending them off towards the corners of the map instead. Sometimes people try to hide Zerglings to run them all the way around the map at the earliest convenience, hiding the second Overlord. People have been scouting around with Overlords in very weird patterns. And even though normally they are maybe not the most optimal ones, in many of the instances a lot of damage can be done just by simply not giving your opponent the vision that he is looking for. Regardless though, we do see that spine crawler going up right now for Leenock. Quite interesting. I think he's going to plan on following this up with a Baneling's Nest as well. This is one of the safest openers here that I've seen in a little while here for Leenock. Now this is what I'm talking about. A couple of Zerglings here are trying to make their way past this, and all of a sudden there's a randomly timed Overlord here by Leenock trying to figure out exactly what's going on. On top of that, Leenock is also scouting around right now with Zerglings on the top right hand side of the map to figure out whether or not something weird is indeed happening. And now that we see Impact moving forward here with these two queens, he's going to be able to pick up an Overlord and go for a quick third base. So while you may originally have been planning to try and go for a third base, or you know, to go for a quick aggressive push here with a bunch of Banelings, I mean, usually you try indeed morph those in right at this point in time, and he can still do a little bit of pressure. I highly doubt that Leenock will be taking all too much damage just yet because he's been scouting it. But once again, the mind games in this matchup are absolutely ridiculous. And one thing, of course, to keep in mind as well is that once again, these guys will be facing off against each other quite regularly. They know exactly what each other are capable of, but hold that thought because the Banelings are trying to make their way inside of that mineral line. But with a brilliantly placed spine crawler, no damage right there will be dealt whatsoever. But because they face so very often against each other, right, there's a good chance that they know a lot more about the matchup than we do right now, and that they will be playing not just against, you know, this game right now and for this series, but also against previous games that they played against each other, knowing what both of them are indeed going to be capable of on this specific map. Now, one interesting thing to note right now is that Leenock did scout out that his opponent is going for a third base, but he's really not got a third base coming up just yet. There's a bunch of Banelings. Once again, he will have to try and connect here very nicely. Beautiful splits right there, but I think that that spine crawler indeed will end up getting killed. One of the Banelings trying to detonate right there effectively as well, but so far, I actually really do like the micro right here from Impact. There's a lot more workers available right now for the blue Zerg player, but at this point, look at the amount of links that Impact is sending across the map. He's even morphing in Banelings inside of his opponent's natural. This is, of course, going to be some crazy Zergling Baneling micro. Both of them are trying to get the best detonations that they can. Beautiful split off right there by Impact, though, picking off a couple of these Banes, but the same can be said right here. Woo, that one was just about to finish up, actually, but the same can be said right there for the blue Zerg. But all things considered, I think that Leenock will be able to hold on here, at the very least for the time being. The thing, however, is that there's a ton more Zerglings making their way across. More and more Banelings are morphed in right now as well. Links are trying to move in. Impact desperately trying to rally a Baneling right there towards that low ground of his opponent as well, trying to do as much damage as he can. There are going to be a whole bunch of Zerglings out right now, as well as Roaches that will try their very best at picking off these Banelings. Beautiful target firing right here by Leenock, trying to make the most of the units that he's got. But the question is, are there not just simply a little bit too many units here across the map? Aren't there just simply a little bit too many Zerglings reinforcing this army? And so far, I mean, I was gonna say a lot of these are at a very low amount of HP. You're gonna have to try and pick this off, and so far I think that Leenock may be able to hold on, but Impact has indeed secured that advantage. While this is all going on, he's been squeezing out workers here and there, and all of a sudden, even though the supply counts were heavily in favor here of Leenock just a little bit ago, they are now in favor of Impact, and he's 8 workers ahead. Such a funny way of playing it. Such a weird way of playing it. Impact going for that quick third base. Feigning to go for a, you know, quick macro play. Leenock going on 2 bases, but instead having far more workers out. And then, you know, we see the one player that was supposedly playing macro going up against the guy that was supposedly playing not macro. And it becomes so confusing. It becomes so confusing very fast, and it's such a cool matchup. A lot of people don't like Zerg vs Zerg for that reason. I think it's absolutely incredible. I think it's absolutely incredible to see how much value some players get out of these things. Ooh, beautiful split off right there. That is the oldest trick in the book to try and, you know, confuse the opponent's unit right there by those little bushes. But all things considered, I mean, roach speed is done right now for Leenock. He's going to be able to go for a bit of a push in particular once +1 attack finishes up here for his roaches. But as it is right now, he's going to have to try and defend for a little while longer now. Nice positioning right there on the banelings, having one on top of the ramp, one in the mineral line. Leenock will be able to deflect these links here at the very least for right now. Impact just about to finish up his own layer 2. He's gonna start up the +1 attack upgrade and shortly the Glio Reconstitution research. He's actually still got that economy lead though, and 52 workers versus 46 may not sound like a significant difference, but it adds up very quickly over the course of just a couple of minutes. Now +1 attack is a really important upgrade as well in ZVZ for roaches, because normally it takes 3 shots to kill a Zergling with a roach. With +1 attack it only takes 2, so effectively speaking it makes them far more powerful. Leenock trying to distract his opponent right there with a single Zergling in the main base, trying to pick off a couple of workers here and there at the third base instead. Zergling's trying to poke in here on the other end as well, but with some really solid positioning right here, Leenock has been capable of preventing his opponent from running by and killing any workers here in those mineral lines. I wouldn't be surprised though if Impact is actually going for a timing attack here shortly. I mean, look at this setup right now, right? These will finish up roughly around the same time. However, there are a couple of banelings that are now also being morphed in here in the, I guess this would be the 4th base location or the 5th of Impact. This is going to be important to get scouted. Roach is currently not in position to pick this up. He's going to have to be very fast. Also, no Overlord located over there, quite surprisingly. And I think that actually, ooh, that is a big deal right there. Both players trying to play their heart out, but all of a sudden, you know, those couple of banelings came in, and all of a sudden, this is looking really solid once again for Leenock. Now, in the end, there was really only 5 workers that ended up getting killed there. So I think it more or less just evened up the score rather than giving a huge lead here to Leenock. But the reason why I give him the advantage right now is because of the sheer amount of workers that he's got right now. He's got a nice set of upgrades. He's going for +2 attack here already. That does mean, here that Leenock is indeed setting up for a nice push. On top of that, he's got the tunneling claws done on his roaches. So that means that he's going to be able to heal him up really quickly and pressure his opponent with relative ease. There indeed, we see some of them moving towards that natural. But at the same time, a huge amount of the army here from Impact is moving across the map. And the question is, aren't there just simply a little bit too many split off here to try and deal damage to his opponent's economy? Because Impact, I mean, he knows that a lot of these units are indeed across the map. He's just going for the kill right now, trying to do as much damage here with the units that he's got, using the reinforcements instead to try and deal with his opponent's tunneling roaches, and so far he's been doing a great job, and indeed Leenock will be forced to GG out. That Impact picks up game number 2. The mind games in this series have been absolutely ridiculous so far, and I hope I'm doing a decent job at explaining it. If you've got any questions, let me know down below in the comment section of this video, because I am always willing to help. But so far, this has been an awesome series to watch. Anyway, it's currently 1-1. That means that the victor of this game right here will indeed obtain the match victory as well. And I wonder whether or not either of them are going to show a little bit of cheese. I mean, at this point, right, you gotta have nerves with steel. If you know that you're currently 1-1 and you know that you're gonna be capable of winning the game right here, right now, cheese is most definitely an option, but it's a bit of a risky one as well when you trust in your macro-focused style instead. And of course, both of these players, I mean, I've seen a couple of people ask why the 13-12 and like the super aggressive strategies are so very uncommon in Korean StarCraft 2. And the simple answer is that both of these guys, they've got micro that is, you know, far better than your average Grandmaster in Europe, right? Their micro is very, very good, and because of that, they usually, even when they go for like a complete build order loss, right? What's considered to be a build order loss over here in Europe, you know, or the North American server for that matter. I mean, if you know, they go for a strategy that's considered a build or a loss over here, they've still got the micro to usually pull off an advantage anyway, just because they won't be clumping up their drones, and they usually do a great job at just simply out-microing their opponent. The defender's advantage in Zerg vs Zerg is very significant, where it basically means that your units are spawning closer to the engagement if you're the one defending than your opponent's units, because they will have to run all the way across the map, and that's a huge deal in most of the mirror matchups anyway. And because of that, I mean, most of the time you don't really see all too much super aggressive early game cheese, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't see any kind of +1 attack timings, that we shouldn't see any massive amount of Zerglings and Banelings trying to move across the map as well really early on, like we sort of saw from Impact in the previous game, but he was really just simply trying to buy some time to squeeze out some workers instead. But so far, judging by the setups right here from both of these players, this is looking near identical once again, where both of them are just simply trying to play a standard macro-focused strategy. Now, Impact is indeed going to leave the drones in the gas geyser right there. He's also making 6 Zerglings here already, so maybe he is planning to get a little bit aggressive. He's actually rallying the Zerglings all the way up to the northern end right here, so maybe he's planning to just simply secure that third base every single time. We'll keep an eye out on exactly what he's got planned right here. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Leenock also leaving the drones in the gas after starting up that metabolic boost upgrade, and he is going to be capable of getting a Baneling nest here shortly. And once again, we see that spine crawler going down. Very safe play here from Leenock. This is a pretty uncommon thing to do nowadays in Zerg vs Zerg, but I feel like in the game that we just watched, this absolutely paid off. However, judging by apparently the setup, he has seen something that we did not see. Maybe the second Overlord right there? I'm not entirely sure, but he has spotted something that apparently forced him to cancel that spine as well, and apparently he feels safe enough to just simply go for the third hatchery here very early on, and it looks like we see something very similar right here for Impact. Both of the players taking that third base right around the 3-minute mark, and actually, well, he's got to take it right now. You gotta take it right now. Ooh, there we go. I was gonna say, if that drone gets picked off right there by those 2 Zerglings, that would be a pretty significant loss. But Impact, he's managed to sneak a couple of Zerglings across the map. He's gonna morph in some Banes, and this time around, there is no spine crawler to greet them. So I wonder how this is gonna play out. Leenock, of course, will have those Zerglings as well as 2 defensive Banes out here in just a little bit. So nice timing on those by him. At the same time, we see a little bit of a skirmish right here between 2 Zerglings. They're trying to, or 4 Zerglings, I guess. They're trying to pick each other off, and they're playing, you know, catch me. I don't know exactly what's going on here. They're playing a ring around the rosy, trying to get as much value as they can, but one of the Banelings didn't really feel that. At the same time, though, we did see the trade right there, or we didn't see it, but we can assume the trade right there between the 2 Banes versus the 2 Banes. They got a decent detonation off, and neither player really taking any significant losses here whatsoever, and just really testing the waters. I love this as well about a lot of these games. Even though neither of them are, you know, committing to any serious aggression just yet, both of them are constantly testing the waters, right? Hey, are you making your defensive Banelings? Are you making them at the correct time? Are you not playing a little bit overly greedy? Is there a chance I could potentially pick up 2 worker kills right here? If you do, that's going to be a nice lead because you're going to be able to push ahead in that economy. And it's just like minor advantages that will play a huge role in this matchup. Now, we see a lair going down here. No Roach Warren just yet, which is quite surprising here for Leenock. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we do see that Roach Warren going down, but no lair just yet. So a bit of a variety right here in both of the build orders. This does open up a timing attack for Impact, but at the same time, I'm a little worried here. Is Leenock not forgetting? Ooh, beautiful detonation right there. Is he not forgetting the Roach Warren, or is he purposely not getting it just yet, just to try and be, you know, a little bit more economical focused instead? And there, indeed, it does go down. Normally you line up the lair timing right there with the roach speed, which is why it was a little bit surprising right there. But nonetheless, there's 10 roaches just about to spawn here for Impact, and I think he's going to be capable of either using those to move across the map, or he will be able to start droning once again to keep this base up for a little while longer. Lings and Banes, though, trying to just simply engage. Nice detonation there, actually, by Leenock, forcing his opponent to split off a bunch of units. At the same time, 2 Zerglings actually made it inside of the main base right there of the red Zerg. They're going to be able to do quite a nice work, and while a couple of the roaches do get pricked off right there for practically free, I'm starting to get a little bit worried, because Impact is not only moving across the map with a huge amount of army here, at the same time he's also pushing into that main base, splitting off the Banes right there. Ooh, I don't think that was the correct option, and while a lot of them end up taking a ton of damage, he was trying to be a little bit cheekier there than he needed to be, and he ended up not getting the detonation that he was looking for. That could have been a game That could have been a game-winning move right there. Now, a lot of the reinforcing units did get picked off here by a small amount of Zerglings that are still across the map. But Impact, he is still pressuring his opponent, trying to do as much damage as he can, picking off a couple of roaches here and there as well. Looks like he may try and just simply go for the third base kill here instead. A lot of units, though, are trying to fight it out. And this is once again where the defender's advantage becomes so very important. Trying your very best to prevent your opponent from, you know, reinforcing this is a big deal. But Leenock, he is losing a lot of units here, trying his best to hold on to this army here, but so far, I mean, even drones are forced to pull off the line. So far, he's starting to take a significant amount of losses, and while the Zerglings are trying to nibble away right here at that third base, more and more units will get caught out, and drones, I mean, whenever you have to force drones off the line, you are going to be in a bit of a panicky situation, but I think that just barely Leenock will be able to keep this base alive, and just barely will he be able to get it out on there with only really a handful of workers going down. That was some brilliant control right there by the red Zerg player. I actually thought for a second he was dead, but all things considered, I mean, he lost 4 workers there in exchange of keeping his hatchery alive. I think that most definitely was what he was looking for, and all things considered there, Leenock will be able to start up his Glial Reconstitution, and he's just simply holding on to this base to the best of his abilities. Meanwhile, though, of course, Impact was not just exclusively making army. He was also adding on workers, and at this point, it's 55 Harvesters in favor of him. He's also got that Spire coming up, actually Leenock that is. He's got that Spire coming up to follow this up with a lot of Mutalisk as well. One of those like more common switches nowadays to go from Roaches into Mutas. Something that was absolutely unheard of about a year or so ago. But at this point, it's a very common strategy to go ahead and go for the Roaches into the Mutalisk, because technically speaking, they do counter each other. But you're gonna need a lot of gas to try and make it work, and I think that at the very least, we have arrived at a bit of a stalemate. Because if Impact decides to move across the map right now, these Roaches are going to be caught with their pants down against a whole bunch of Mutalisk, and Leenock is just simply going to, you know, get the gases going. He's just simply going to make a lot of drones, and we see something very similar here on the other side of the map as well. Now, I was going to say, if Impact wants to make a move for it, he should go right now, right before the Mutas get made. There's actually a really smart little timing here, also finishing up +1 attack. The funny thing is that while technically Roaches would never counter Mutalisk, when you are getting plentiful numbers, oftentimes the Roaches can just simply overrun the player that is making Mutas. But at this point, of course, the Mutas will be coming out with the help of the Roaches as well. And while there will be some of the production tap here very shortly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be the case. There's a lot of Roaches here ready to defend already to try and stop Impact from really moving onwards. 2 of those spine crawlers that were built earlier, they're going to try and help out in this engagement as well, doing a huge amount of damage so far. Drones are forced off the line as well, and even though Leenock made that Spire, right, and his opponent made that forcible move, and once again, even though drones were once again, you know, pulled there to take a couple of hits, and you know, some of them ended up dying, I think that there may just barely be enough defenses right here for Leenock to hold on. Units are just about to spawn there. The Mutas do indeed come down, but the question is, are there going to be enough? Eventually, this entire army will get picked off, but the question is, will there not be too many losses before that happens? A lot of reinforcing Roaches right now as well, while we do see Hydralisk on the other side of the map. A lot of them will try their very best. Corrosive Biles going down to damage both the Mutalisk as well as the Roaches, but just barely. Once again, Leenock manages to hold on with minimal losses here. I mean, I think about 9, yeah, I was going to say about 10 or so workers will end up going down here in this game, in the entirety of it. All things considered here, this has been an extremely solid game here for both of these players. I think that shortly we're going to have to see a 4th base come out for both of them as well. I mean, there's only 4 Mutas out at this point. There's going to be more than enough Hydras to deal with this, but the thing is, you never know how much the Muta player is going to try and commit to this, right? How many Mutas is he really planning on making? Roach is now also moving here on the right-hand side of the map, or the top right-hand side of the map. A spine, or rather a bunch of these changelings were indeed chasing it around, so Impact fully knows about what is going on. And indeed, the 4th base gets secured here for Leenock, and I think that we may even see some late-game play as well, and I love this. Since Leenock knows that he is forcing, right? He knows that he is forcing a lot of Hydras. What counters Hydralisk? It's Banelings. Banelings, of course, deal bonus damage against light. Hydralisk are light units, so they deal a huge amount of damage right there to that army. But the question is, will we be able to roll in the Banelings on top of all of these Hydras, or will the Roaches be able to shield away against the units like we've seen so many times before already? Lurker Den going down right now for Impact. I actually really like this move as well, because what counters the Mutas, it's the Hydras, but what counters the Banelings, it is going to be the Lurkers. And really anything on the ground gets countered by Lurkers, and it gets so interesting, right? I mean, once again, I'm hoping I'm doing a good job right here at explaining my excitement for ZVZ. I think it's a brilliant matchup. It's so technical, it's so difficult. I don't really like playing it nearly as much as I like watching it at the highest level of play, because there's so many finer, so many finer details going down, and both players are just trying their best to get an advantage, but at the highest level, like we're seeing right here, there's just really not an advantage that can easily be obtained. I mean, I felt like Impact could have done a lot more damage with the 2 Banes that he sent into the main base. He tried splitting them off right there to make sure that the drones couldn't really escape anywhere. I felt like a potential huge lead could have been picked up right over there, but other than that, both of these players have been playing their absolute heart out, and they are doing a significant job at dealing the damage that is required, but also defending to the best of their abilities. Now, Leenock, he's got a huge amount of Banes. He's got a huge amount of Banelings right here. And Impact, I mean, his army, it is going to have Lurkers shortly, but Lurker Dens, as we all know, take about 4.5 years to finish up. He's morphing in a couple of Lurkers right now, which I really like, but the question is, will that be in time? There's only a handful of Mutas here remaining. I think he actually made only about 7 or so in total in this game, maybe even less than that. There's Lurkers just about to finish up, but the question is it going to be in time? Leenock is straight up moving towards that natural, and I actually really do like that setup. The Banelings trying to look for all of the Hydras, but if they have to connect to the Roaches, I mean, I don't think he's gonna complain here either. A couple of these Lurkers will be able to deal damage, but the zoning so far has been brilliant here by Leenock, using those corrosive biles to the best of his abilities, and all of a sudden, he saw an opportunity, and he ran for it. There is, of course, detection here available, but the Lurkers, I mean, they know that this army is gonna be stuck here, but the Lurkers, they will be able to prevent Leenock from really easily escaping out of here as well. The question is that not just simply gonna be all too much damage here being done already by this red army? Impact dropping and plummeting in that army supply count, really starting to fall behind here. Corrosive biles going down on that ramp, dealing so much damage right there to the blue army, and while the Lurkers can zone away at this army very nicely, the reinforcing units for Leenock are heading straight towards the 3rd base. On top of that, he's mining from 4 bases here already, sending so many units across, and while this was a very close engagement, and he's gonna lose every single last one of these units here as well, all of a sudden this is starting to look heavily in favor right here of the red Zerg player. Drones will indeed be found right there on the move right there to the 4th base expansion. Lurkers are trying to get in position, however, to hold on to this base, and I think that they may very well be able to do so. Lurkers, however, are not going to be able to cover this entire terrain, and once again, it looks like Roaches will try to make their way towards the natural, which is fully exposed at this point in time. Lurkers will be picked off right there by Roaches, the units that they do, of course, hard counter, but I think that Impact has just barely managed to hold on here, at the very least for right now. Burrowing a lot of these units to try and regenerate life as well, but I mean, the supply counts are not lying. Leenock almost doubling his opponent's supply right now. At the very least, the army supply is being doubled at the very... I mean, look at that damage. It's insane. The Lurker will get picked off there. More and more Lurkers are being morphed in right now, while technically Impact has got the perfect counter right here for his opponent's army, just simply making such decisive movements, right? Realizing that Impact was out of position will just barely allow Leenock to obtain the victory in this intense best of 3 series. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And other than that, I want to thank you very much so for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.